Knowing what to pay for your talent is critical for running a business. You've got to keep the talent you have, and if you pay too little, then they're going to leave. And this happened in spades, by the way, following the pandemic, when all kinds of companies raised, especially in the U.S., raised their pay rates, and all of a sudden, people were, the conventional wisdom is people don't leave because of pay; they leave because of culture or the manager. That wasn't true during that period of time. During the early 2020s, people were leaving because they could get 20, 30, even 50% more by going someplace else and went for the exact same job. And when
Welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I am super excited to have you here today because I am here with my most amazing guest, Cary. Thank you so much for being here today.
Michelle, it's a pleasure to join you.
Awesome. So give everybody the highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Sure. I'm Cary Sparrow. I am the founder and CEO of a company called WageScape. We specialize in providing real-time labor market intelligence, which is a fancy way of saying we know who's hiring, how much they're paying, what they're looking for, who's available in the labor market, with data from all over the world. So that's my day job, and my everything else job is I have a couple of kids that I love very dearly, and a wife and a dog, and I live in Minneapolis.
Nice. I love it. So how did you get into wage data? That's a very specific niche as your career choice.
Yeah, so it's a friend of mine calls a career like mine a purple squirrel, meaning that it's not an ordinary career path by any stretch. I actually started out going to school way back a long time ago when the PCs just come out, to study computer engineering. And the U.S. Navy was kind enough to pay me a full scholarship for my engineering education, and then give me a job afterwards. And so after I graduated, I was in the submarine force in the Navy. I was on nuclear submarines as an officer, and
What?
spent about 8 years doing that. And that was all operations, basically running nuclear reactors, running submarines all over the world. And when I got out, so that's, career one was military operations on submarines. Career two, I got into management consulting. And when I was getting out of the Navy, I had an opportunity to join a big consulting firm, and that sounded interesting. And I went and did that. I started as an associate, like bottom of the ladder. And 14 years later, I left as a managing partner running a global line of business. And so had a great time there, worked with a couple hundred companies personally. I was running teams that, worked for a few hundred more. So I got to see lots of different business models, lots of different things, help companies with big changes. I specialized in helping companies align their workforce, put in place workforce strategies, put in place all the programs, all the HR infrastructure, technology, but also like the benefits and the comp programs and all the other capabilities to manage their workforce. That's kind of what I did, and I left consulting to go do that at a really big global company here in Minneapolis, and had a great time doing that. And along the way, I was just always kind of wired to look at new business opportunities, and realized that a lot of problems, inefficiency, misalignment with leadership and things related to the really bad quality of underlying data. And nothing exemplified this in my mind more than the state of compensation data, which, if you get me on a soapbox, there's a few of us that you get us on a soapbox and we can talk for hours and hours about how bad the information about what people get paid is. And I saw that there was, with lots of things moving to the web, this is long before AI, lots of things moving to the web, though, that there was an opportunity to improve what was going on there. And as I talked to our consulting partners and our technology partners and kind of laid out how I thought, this was an area that could be really a lot better, and they, what were they doing about it? They all didn't see it. And so I branched off on my own. I founded WageScape. That was 10 years ago. We've been pretty lucky that we've developed our own following. We've got, a world-class data platform that can tell you, anywhere in the world, who's hiring for any kind of job, how much are they expected to pay for that job. We can tell you anywhere in the world who's available for that, for any kind of job, who's in all the different jobs around the world. Lots of things that we can do, and we're continuing to expand that data platform. So,
Nice.
so
That's
that's how I
awesome.
got. That's how I got there, and
Yep.
I kind of got back to my roots because when I left my corporate job and I told people that I had started my own company, everyone assumed that I had gone back to consulting, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing consulting. Not, I mean, I got a lot out of consulting. I you know really valued and benefited from that, that specific career. But no, I'm like, I'm in a high tech big data startup that's, you know is a high tech startup, hardcore tech. I'm kind of back to my computer roots with this big data component layered onto it, and obviously business strategy and business leadership being the main components. So
Nice. Well, one of the biggest reasons I'm probably not an entrepreneur anymore, well, one is my attitude. The second one is because every time I got paid, it was basically at the whim of whoever was hiring me. It's like, I think we should pay you this. Does that sound good or not? And if I agreed, great. And if we didn't, whatever. My last job, I was like 25. So
yeah.
we're, that ended quickly. But why is notoriously pay such a I don't know if I call it a flippant area of business or an oxymoron or misunderstood or like why are there so many problems around that concept in general?
Well, you can look at the problems around pay through multiple frames of reference, right? But let's just start with kind of the business leadership frame of reference. Knowing what to pay for your talent is critical for running a business. You've got to keep the talent you have, and if you pay too little, then they're going to leave. And this happened in spades, by the way, following the pandemic, when all kinds of companies raised, especially in the U.S., raised their pay rates, and all of a sudden people were, the conventional wisdom is people don't leave because of pay, they leave because of culture or the manager. That wasn't true during that period of time, during the early 2020s. People were leaving because they could get 20, 30, even 50% more by going someplace else and went for the exact same job. And when now you've got kind of a once in a generation period of inflation, also that was a really meaningful difference. People were hurting, and they took those jobs. And so pay is not just about getting the right talent, it's about keeping the right talent under much more pressurized situations. And companies spend a huge amount trying to figure out what's going on with pay, and they depend on an entire industry of specialists, that third party consulting firms that go out and they use surveys to measure what jobs are getting paid in other companies, and they put together lots of statistics, and and that's been going on for decades, right? And that's when, and that was a really innovative approach decades ago. But what it means is that when you go out to get that information, first of all, the information that you're getting is based on pay decisions that were made up to a year prior, just because of the way that companies handle budgeting and raises and things. And then it takes many months to consolidate all that information. Then it takes, even more time for the companies that consume it to figure out what to do with it. And then they make their pay decisions. And by the time you're doing that, your original point of information can be a couple years old. So one thing is that it's really late. Another thing is because it's survey based, there's limits to how much data can be collected, because it's a very expensive way to collect data. And so that means that you can't see what's going on right now, in a specific city, for example, or a specific, like, the northwest suburbs of Chicago have very different pay requirements than the south side of Chicago. And you can't, there's no surveys that tell you that anymore. It's very frustrating for managers who are trying to hire talent. And they're basically kind of flying blind on that. And they have compensation teams, specialists, whose job it is try to sort through all of that. And so you've got data that's late, that's not accurate, because the sample sizes are really small, because surveys, you can only, administer so many surveys. It's not precise. And the other thing is you have to be an expert to use it, right? So you have to be specially trained in order to use the information. And it's not fungible. You can't take kind of data from one area and directly compare it to data that's coming from a different source. There's all these things that are built up that just makes this really, really unwieldy. And it was an area that I think is still kind of ripe for disruption. The surveys aren't going away in the immediate future, but our approach was totally different. Our approach, oh, and by the way, there's antitrust laws that explicitly forbid companies from sharing pay data with each other because they don't want anti-competitive practices going on. That's in the States, but there's corollaries in other parts of other countries in the world too, right?
Yep.
So
Meanwhile, you have the employees are going, I want to know everything. And in the
right,
digital age, they're
exactly.
going to go and find whatever they want.
So as of 10 years ago,
Yeah.
the insight that WageScape was founded on was there's a ton of data online about these jobs anyways, and it's getting refreshed every day. It's pervasive. At the time, about 80% of all jobs in the US and in a number of other, like where you are in Canada, the number was a little bit less, but now it's about the same. Those jobs are all posted online, almost by policy in most companies. And lots of other countries that was the same way. And many of them included pay ranges. So our insight was, instead of going with little tiny samples of data that's really late, why don't we take a look at what people are saying they're going to pay for the job, which is immediate. It's fully transparent, meaning there's no law against sharing what any individual company said they're going to pay for a job when it's out in the public domain anyway. So let's make it totally transparent. Let's make it real time. Let's make it huge scale so it's really precise. You want to know what HVAC technicians make in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Good luck finding that out, from most surveys, but the online data can tell you exactly that. And then who's hiring them and what skills are they looking for and how long have their postings been open? So are they having a tough time finding those jobs? And that was the insight that we brought to the market. And there were a couple of other firms that were pursuing and have been pursuing similar things. And in the last 10 years, that's really kind of become much more of a standard, tool in companies' toolkits to understand what's going on, especially with companies that have employee populations that are really pay sensitive. So big hourly populations, for example, that, if somebody else a mile away is offering an extra 50 cents an hour, that's really meaningful. And they'll take it. There's no loyalty when it comes to that kind of change. And so companies have to stay on top of what their competitors are doing now. And that's where we help. It's also helped by the whole trend towards pay transparency. So more companies are publishing what they have or what they're going to be offering. It's helped by trends around things like pay equity, around the strong preference, generational preference of job seekers to only go to companies that are transparent about what they do and what they pay. So more and more job seekers are just ignoring job ads that don't include pay. So there's a number of trends that have been developing over time that, kind of reflect the direction that we chose to go.
Well, and I would think that your ability to be able to garner information that's pertinent, like say, Fortune 500 just laid off 2,000 people, that's going to affect the market drastically. And if they were remote workers, it's not just where head office was. So, like, to be able to get that in a survey is going to be insane to try and augment. Like,
Yeah.
there's just no way that's going to happen.
Right. There's all kinds of other things. So there's like all these approaches that are cobbled together to deal with those kinds of special situations. And our view is actually there's a lot of stuff that is available online. So then the challenge becomes that, because anyone can go and read job ads online. So that's not a real value add to be able to read job ads. To be able to read 80 to 90% of all the job ads that are published today in the entire world, that's a value add. The ability to take, the way that, millions of different companies define individual jobs and put them together so that you can compare jobs across companies. That's a value add. And so there's yeah, there's sources of information that are easier, but to through online, but to make it useful, you need someone like us to be able to help with that. And that's where we've developed that kind of expertise. And you're right, all these other typical kind of like whether it's economic data or comp survey data or industry published data or things like that, heavily curated, and a lot of attention that goes to it, but it you really have to cobble together lots of different sources in order to get a picture. And our view is more and more that you can get that picture from sources that are kind of available already.
Well, and what I particularly like about this, like back in the 80s, if you wanted to get a new and innovative thought, you kind of had to go and travel somewhere, see what they did, and you go and
Yeah.
talk to them, and then you develop like that's a lot of time intensive interviewing and reading and whatever in order to come up with something innovative. Whereas I'm thinking that with this data, you can look at, well, okay, how are they doing it in other places in the world? And it's not just, what's the cost of living in that city. There's other cultural and economic factors going in there that
Yeah.
I would think that your data would be able to kind of give the right people phenomenal insights.
Without a doubt, you're absolutely right. The biggest surprise um, our clients had when we started talking with them about the data was the fact that they now could see what other companies were doing. They never, not only had they never been able to do that, they were precluded by law from being able to do that. But we deal in data that originates in the public domain, so there's nothing holding us back from sharing that. And suddenly they could see what are all their competitors doing. Do they have a big sales force or a small sales force? Have they cut back? But a lot of folks are interested when a company cuts back on certain kinds of jobs, to your point earlier. And then they were able to see, well, actually, who are our competitors? So just because you're the same, you have a competitor that's in an industry, that doesn't mean that those are the folks that are competing for your talent. So now suddenly you could, like, I was working with a recruiting firm in the Midwest who had a medium size machine shop as a client, and they were really struggling to get talent. And this was, back in the early 2020s, and they were offering their entry level welders and machinists $18 an hour. And I was like, I just drove through one of the big fast food chains. I said they were offering 18 an hour to their first shift full-time employees. So your client needs to understand that they're not competing against other machine shops. They're competing with fast food chains for talent and
Wow.
everything else in between, right?
Yeah.
So, that's part of the pressure that's on organizations now is who's actually out there that's taking, competing for your talent and also could have talent that you could use. Is a totally different picture. And it varies by city. And it's, changing pretty dynamically. So,
Wow.
yeah.
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 That is crazy and awesome. So what is one of your pet peeves about kind of the industry in general or how things were done in the past? What are one of the things that you go, man, I just wish people understood this?
Well, in spite of all um, uh, the number of CEOs and boards and business executives that talk very passionately and believe about the role of talent, having the right talent drives business success. At the end of the day, the people that help ensure that the right talent is in place are extraordinarily underfunded. And they don't just have low budgets, but they also have hugely onerous budgeting approval processes that they have to deal with. And so tools and insights that can have ROIs that are millions or even billions of dollars have to be purchased by people that have budget authority of less than $1,000, and that math just doesn't add up, right? And so that's one thing where I think folks, there's a growing range in the continuum of folks that are taking kind of a more dynamic and current approach to seeing their workforce. And the folks that are on the leading edge of that, you're seeing superior business results, and the ones that are on the lagging side of it, you're seeing them struggle more and more. Many of them didn't come out of the pandemic, and a number of them are still struggling, as a result. So, budgeting is always a pet peeve of mine when it comes to, folks that help manage the workforce and investments in workforce capabilities. Um, but like I said, that's kind of a self-correcting problem also, because if talent truly is what drives business success, and if you're not investing in it properly and you're not stewarding those investments properly, you're going to fall behind.
Absolutely.
I mean,
So,
the other thing,
yep.
it's interesting. There's a few soapboxes I have. There's one that's controversial right now, at this point in time,
Tell tales.
um, and that's around remote work, right? And so I always have to like cynically smile when I see more and more companies that are moving back to in office, and the reasons they give for it. And that clearly is the pendulum is clearly swinging back, especially with larger employers. And the reason I kind of cynically smile is because you're putting a burden back on employees that you're not compensating them for. So when they work remotely, they don't have to worry about the same level of spend for dress code. They don't have to worry about transportation expenses at the same level. They don't have to worry about food expenses or daycare expenses, or all the added costs of like PTO and juggling different schedules and so forth to manage kind of their lives around being in an office. And now you're putting a burden back on them, saying, no, you got to manage all that stuff to come back in. And a lot of them, a lot of people have figured out that they have choices. That's another thing that came out of the pandemic, was people realized they have a lot of choice in terms of what they can do for a living. And I just think it's a uncompetitive move in general to require employees to come back in the office, especially for the better part of the work week or full time. And I know all the arguments for it, right? But the other thing that I think people are missing is that, so now it's 2025. In the last 5 years, um, there are millions of businesses that have started up that are entirely remote. Now, I started WageScape 10 years ago as a fully remote company because I wanted to be able to tap into talent anywhere in the world. And I had the benefit of experience in managing virtual teams. I had like 25 years of it. So I knew how to do it. There are a lot of companies that's the starting condition. And those companies are moving through startup, and now they're into high growth, and now they're becoming medium-sized companies. And these are the competitors of the big firms that they're the growing cadre of competitors, and they've known it only one way. And there's a ton of extra flexibility you get for that. So I think it's, that's, you asked about pet peeve. It's more like a soapbox, which is, I think the remote work is a horse that left the barn a long time ago, and people that are trying to put it back in without, a high level of care, aren't really doing themselves the favors they think they are.
I absolutely concur. Well, we're on the trajectory. What do you think the next 5 years might hold?
So there's no it's going to sound like a cliche, but there's no question in my mind that the pace of change being introduced by artificial intelligence is going to be something that we've never experienced before. And so what is 5 years from now going to look like? There's going to be a lot of things that look like what it is today, but there's going to be a ton of other things that we just can't even imagine. I mean, a year ago, there were things related to AI that I couldn't imagine. And a year before that, and a year ago, there were, AI capabilities that the year before that we couldn't have imagined. And
Right.
I think our eyes really opened with the introduction of large language models like ChatGPT, that suddenly you can interact with AI and it'll do an awful lot of work for you. And that's only going to increase, and it's going to get more and more pervasive. Companies I talk to have shifted their entire technology and process strategy around AI. It's not like an incremental, an extra project on the side. It's now become the centerpiece of what they're
Wow.
doing. I think it's going to introduce all kinds of societal disruption that we're already starting to hear about it, but the pain isn't really being felt yet, but it will be
Hmm.
soon. It'll have all kinds of winners and all kinds of losers. I like to look at the winners because I see the opportunities there, but that's the next 5 years. In addition to kind of political chaos, I would say AI is going to be the driving force.
Nice, I love it. Well, I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients, but before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
So I'm super excited to hear about an example of a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. We're really an enabler to lots of different types of companies and organizations. One that is interesting, I think, a little bit geeky, is one of our first clients was one of the biggest retailers in North America, and they brought our data in to understand what was happening real time within all the markets that they had stores in. And they've developed over the years, developed a capability where they monitor pay changes amongst any other retailer in every one of those markets using our data, updated every week. Our data gets updated daily, but they update theirs every week. And once they see that a competitor is offering a change in pay in a specific location that's outside of limits that they set, they automatically send reports to the management team in that market and the HR team to immediately be able to make adjustments. And that does two things. One is it keeps them competitive, obviously. But the other thing that's a huge benefit from all of this is their whole leadership team, kind of top to bottom, is now aligned on what's truth. Whereas so many teams operate, with he said, she said kind of approaches. Whoever has the biggest voice. So and so just opened up a big warehouse here. They're paying X number of dollars an hour. We're going to lose everybody. Well, is that truth? No, it's not. You can't. Can you match it? So and so just got an offer down the street, and so that's what the market rate is. It's like, no, that's not necessarily the case. And so you've got lots of people that are going back and forth in terms of what truth is. But by being in front of it, by having a source of data that really is real time and comprehensive, and having it in the hands of folks that are then pushing it out to the rest of the workforce, everybody gets aligned on what truth looks like. Once they trust the data, then everybody's aligned on truth, and they can move on to past, like, is this truth, to what do we do about it. And so there's a huge benefit there. The indirect benefits, I think, are just as big as the direct benefits around having real-time accurate.
Wow. I know so many strategic accountants that would die for that. They're trying to convince their clients to have quarterly meetings where they have
Right.
like updated data,
Right.
on a quarterly basis, let alone a
Yep.
monthly basis, let alone a weekly, let alone daily. That'd be, fantastical. That was awesome. So I know, if nothing else, strategic accountants that are going to want you for their clients, but
Yeah.
other business owners are going, "Oh my God, this sounds amazing." How do they start that journey with you?
Oh, it's easy. You can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to WageScape, my team at wagescape.com. If you mention this podcast, we'll make sure to set you up right with anything we can serve you with.
Beautiful. We will, of course, have all of Cary's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, click on the link, open up a new tab or browser because we're not done yet. So, Cary, I get to ask you, at what point in life did you know that you were special kind of crazy enough to become an entrepreneur?
I always wanted it. I always looked at the world through where are the opportunities, where are the things that people, are missing, how to connect dots that other people don't see. Um, I started really late. So I had been through three entire careers by the time I formed WageScape. And starting a company later in your career journey is a totally different proposition than being a 20-something entrepreneur. But I really just had this itch for a long time to do it. And so just made the leap. I was like, at some point you just got to do it. If you're going to do it, you got to do it. I wouldn't really advise most people to do a late career move to be an entrepreneur, but actually more entrepreneurs are over the age of 45 than are under the age of 30. So,
Well, and there's so many opportunities now where you can make money in a short term. You don't need the 10-year run at it anymore.
right.
It's, you can make money in a year.
It's
And life is
interesting
good.
too. I mean, one of the things I love about my job is I get to see lots of, we work in a really dynamic world and economy, and I get new business ideas all the time. And I've gotten really good at saying no to nearly all of them. But
Good for you.
the ones that are really interesting, I can move really fast on, which
Right.
is totally different than in a corporate, in a corporate world. We've done things that have upended, aspects of the company where we've made the decision in less than a week to do it that would have taken literally years in any, medium or large company. So,
Wow, that was awesome. You have been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
no, I'm just thrilled to be able to, spend the time today. I have lots of things we could talk about, like you and I were talking about on the break. But feel free, if you've got questions, is there anything I was talking about, feel free to reach out to me directly. When you start a business, you can't be afraid to go ask strangers for advice. And I've certainly done that. And so over the last couple of years, I've spent more and more of my time helping people sort through things around career choices and life choices. And I'm happy to do that with your audience as well.
Thanks. That's awesome. So definitely take Cary up on that. Cary, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I know how valuable it is.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.